Okay, we have people still rolling in, but I think we're going to get started so that we can end on time and leave plenty of time for questions. Thank you to everybody who's here. My name is Michael Egerling. I lead marketing here at Trustero. I am joined by three of my colleagues on video right now. So MJ Raber, who is our head of GRC, Nick Martin, who is our VP of product, and Scott Kanufer, who's our VP of operations. We're really excited. We're here to talk to you about something we've been working on for since we started this company. It's called Arrow. Arrow is a AI co-pilot for GRC security and compliance. And what it can do, I think, is really special and should be a big game changer in our industry. And so, like I said, we're pumped up to show it to you today. We've been waiting a long time to get this out in the world. People that have seen it have been really excited about it so far. A couple of housekeeping things. Stick around to the end. We're going to offer an ability to enter our beta program, and the link will be at the end of this presentation. So please stick around to the end. If you can't, you are going to get a recap of this video in a video form of this webinar later on today. Once the video processes through Zoom and we can get it out to you guys, we'll get it out as soon as we can. We'll also send an email with information about the webinar and how to share it. The other thing is, if you have questions, you can start asking them at any time. We prefer you just use the question terminal in Zoom there. So if you go to your Zoom panel and click questions, you'll be able to you'll be able to ask questions live. Our team will try to get to them as they come in. And if we don't get to them, we will answer all questions via email after the webinar. So stick around to hear the answers to those questions. We'll answer some live if we can, and we'll answer as many as possible over the Zoom feature there. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to do a quick primer on intro, and then I'm going to hand it over to the team who's going to walk you through the solution. So switch slides. So what is Arrow? Like I said, Arrow is the first co-pilot, AI co-pilot for GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. At the end of the day, it does four things for the organization that uses it. It does a lot of things, really. It has a lot of features, a lot of functionality. It is plugged into everything we do at Trustero. But at the end of the day, what you're getting, one is extreme visibility and visibility with context into your security environment. So Arrow is running scans of your environment and telling you why something is green, yellow, or red. Not just saying it is green, yellow, or red, but telling you here's exactly why you passed this test or why you're failing this test and what you ought to do next. It gives scale to compliance teams, to GRC teams, because it is giving them that context that they need to do their job more quickly. It is adding extreme rigor into GRC organizations. A good example of this is I'm in marketing. I am not a natural security person, or I haven't, been doing compliance for a very, very long time, but I'm part of our SOC 2 team here at Trustero as we go after our SOC 2 every year. I have 4 controls that I'm in charge of. Well, I rely on Arrow to teach me and show me exactly what I need to do so that I can not be the laggard who is holding us back as we're trying to get our SOC 2 in a timely manner. So it adds rigor, expertise throughout your organization. Most importantly, what Arrow does is that adds availability. So there are tedious, daily, mundane tasks that everyone has to do in their job. The same is true for security professionals, and Arrow can do a lot of those for you. So if you lead a security team, a GRC team, and you have strategic priorities that have been sitting on your roadmap for a long time, Arrow is going to move you along faster to those priorities because your team is going to have more time at their disposal. One more quick slide. Let's get into a little bit of the practical of how it does how it kind of delivers these 3 benefits. So like I said earlier, there's a lot of functionality in Arrow. There's quite a few features that have AI infused into them in our compliance AI platform. But here's 3 of the really special ones. So Audit Scan is the crux of what we're releasing today. Tailored Guidance and Report Scan have been in our Trustero Labs phase for a little while now, and people have seen them. Audit Scan is that next big thing, and that's why we're releasing this Arrow package into the world today. Audit Scan is super, super special because it changes the way organizations will go about getting to a compliant state. So most simply, if you're trying to get to a SOC 2 state, instead of starting with a big list of controls and policies and things that you need to get through to get to that state, we're going to start you with a scan and see where you're at today. So essentially just getting a health check of where your organization is. And we're going to look at every single control and every single policy and every single document and give you feedback, whether you're red, yellow, or green on those things. And it's pretty robust and pretty impressive. And I'll leave all of that to Nick and Scott for later. Like I said, tailored guidance has been out for a while. In a nutshell, what tailored guidance does is it can give you extreme detail on every single control powered by LLMs. It says, here's what this control is, and here's how to get to it. Here's how to go from a zero state to a complete state on this control based on the cloud services that you use, based on your policies, based on your frameworks that you're trying to achieve. And lastly, a pure time saver report scan can read and understand incoming SOC 2 reports from your vendors and partners and flag issues and make sure that you know that you're in a secure state with those vendors and partners. So it's just a pure time saver, especially for organizations who are reading upwards of 100 of these a month. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to pass the mic over to Nick Martin, our VP of Product. Take it away, Nick.
Thanks, Michael. All right, I will share here. So yeah, I'm going to be walking you all through the 3 features that Michael mentioned. So beginning here with Audit Scan, and what you're looking at is the Trustero platform. And this is a demo account that's been loaded with SOC 2 content. So there's SOC 2 policies and controls in here, as well as corresponding evidence. And you're seeing here the results of running audit scans on the account over a period of a few weeks. And the first thing to note is at the beginning, there were some issues, and then steadily over time, it improved until for this demo account, all 50 controls passed and had that sort of assessment conducted by Arrow, our GRC Copilot. To kick off a scan, it's really easy. One button to get you in, and then you just pick which audit you'd like to scan. So in this case, there's only one set up in here because it's a demo environment. And I'll show you what it actually does then in detail. So starting with this first one, it begins by just doing a bunch of simple checks. So that none of this is actually AI powered, but it's making sure that the things are in place that we know must be there in order for somebody to get to audit ready or maintain their compliance state. So let's take a look at what it found on the controls. In this case, you can see most of them are getting that green check mark. They're in good shape. But for this particular control, there was no evidence attached. And like Michael mentioned at the top, the way this works is it actually conducts testing in a way that's very similar to a human auditor. So in order for Arrow to be able to assess the state of a particular control, it's going to rely on evidence, just like a human auditor would, or someone on an internal compliance team would. So the fact that there is no evidence, that would mean, yeah, you're not ready to pass your audit. And in the case here where it's missing, it gives you a call to action. Hey, come over here, make sure you're getting the right thing. And I'll get into a little bit later what the tailored guidance looks like. So how someone would know how to get to the right evidence state. Let's look at another one of the checks that it conducted. In this case, SOC 2 coverage. So for this particular client, they're just going after the security trust service criteria, that set of common criteria. And when they did this assessment, they didn't yet have a control for CC 6.4, physical access. So it's going to flag that and let you know, hey, you don't even have this one covered at all. That's an issue. Now, so those are the simple checks. And after it gets through that, in this case, it didn't run the control checks because a number of these didn't pass. Someone can actually override if they wish to proceed and do a full audit scan anyway. But we just pause it here in case they want to go and fix those issues before proceeding, because it takes a little while to conduct the scan. So we don't want to waste their time. Okay, so now continuing on the journey, we'll step ahead to the point where they got their documents ready. And hey, look at this. We have results of checking the controls themselves. And so you can see in this case, 40 passed and 4 had issues. And if we dig in, we can actually see what some of those issues were on the ones that failed. So in this case, it's going to be checking So this is a control, business continuity control. So it's making sure that they've done the right things with respect to backup and disaster recovery. And you can see here, hey, they didn't have a disaster recovery plan. So the absence of that data, that piece of evidence is going to mean, nope, they're not ready, haven't passed. And so you'll get this explanation here at the top. So the kind of the summary roll up is you didn't pass. And then down here, you'll actually get a detailed version. And this is where the AI comes in. So each of these tests, where you see our little arrow mascot here, this is detailed feedback that's actually coming from the large language model that we're leveraging behind the scenes. And so it's examining using all the context about the environment here. So policy language, control language, the right evidence, that sort of thing, information about the standard itself, to actually provide this level of detailed feedback. So that's a quick look at a failing, both some passing and some failing tests. Okay, so now we'll step forward in time again to the point where they pass. And we'll see in this case, so all their document checks are now passing, and 50 out of 50 controls are passing as well. So at this point, we can go and take a closer look at what a particular control actually looks like, and what sort of checks are actually occurring. So this is a change management control, a pretty typical control in SOC 2. So formal process for tracking and managing system changes is followed, etc. So making sure that there's some rigor around introducing new changes to the primary infrastructure. And for this control, we've got some evidence attached. So you see this down here, and there are a couple of pieces of evidence. So I'll start here with this one, Trustero App Change Management Jira. So this is a screenshot of Jira. And what we have here is an example of it. This is actually just a redacted copy. So some of the key words are blurred, but in the real version, we handed it the actual piece of evidence. And so what you can see here is this is evidence from Jira that shows tickets with each of those has its own key, a summary of what the issue was, who did the work, current status, resolution, dates, and so forth. And so this is the kind of thing that you would expect to have on this kind of control, and is consistent with the guidance that we provide. So you can see in here that we have some information about what you should do. There should be documentation about the changes. There should be system development lifecycle. And then finally, you should have changes within the production environment. You should be logging that sort of stuff. And we call out specifically, hey, Jira is a thing you could use. Okay, so now let's see what Arrow actually did with that information. And we happen to have a particular test here for change management. And you can see what Arrow says is the evidence from our screenshot here shows a system for tracking and managing changes. Each issue has a unique key, a summary of the issue, an assignee, a reporter, a status, resolution, timestamps, etc. So all of the things that we talked about being on here. And so what actually happened is we were able to take this screenshot evidence, interpret that, so actually take and extract the text from this to understand what's going on, and then evaluating, did it meet the criteria or not? Similar to the way that a compliance professional would evaluate a piece of evidence. Okay, so you may be saying at this point, all right, sounds interesting, but maybe you could just throw any old screenshot at this thing and have it be successful. And so here we've got an example of attaching something that is not actually a real screenshot, and instead we attach a cat pic. And let's see what Arrow will do with this instead. So what we can do is go back and look at a previous scan on this same control. And you see this one from a few days prior. And you'll see here again our change management test and the feedback coming back from Arrow. So it's saying right away, doesn't pass. And the evidence, so this definitely screenshot, which is our sarcastic name for that thing, does not support the control, as it does not contain any information related to a formal process for tracking and managing system changes for the introduction of new systems and major changes to existing systems. So a little bit of a silly example, but you can see that there's a pretty dramatic difference in terms of what the results are when you give it something that is actually proper evidence versus not. All right. Let's see. So from here, I will move on. Unless Scott, there's anything that you want to add here about the audit scans?
No, I think you did a great job there, Nick. I would just say that, Arrow is incredibly intelligent in its ability to in the moment see and read even something as manual as a screenshot. So it knew instantly in both those circumstances that you weren't going to fool it, and you weren't going to be able to just change the name and the text of the screenshot to be able to say what it was. Arrow actually examined the specific piece of evidence as it related to that control objective and knew that it was not proper evidence.
That's right. Yep, exactly. And it will do this, of course. So we just showed one really quick example, but there's actually hundreds of these tests that are conducted on a typical SOC 2 audit scan. And so it's able to get in there and look at things in a very detailed way. The other thing that's very cool about this is that it's you can start it at the push of a button. And so it's available anytime, day or night. No delay in terms of beginning this process, which is pretty cool. Arrow doesn't need to sleep or eat. Okay, let's move on then to our next feature that we talked about, which is the tailored guidance. So this is a control about encrypting production data at rest. Pretty typical control that's out there for a SOC 2. Basically saying that you need to encrypt your sensitive and confidential information. And so in this account, the customer happens to be using AWS. And so there is a integration to AWS, we call them receptors, and then those receptors are routing this evidence in. Now, how would somebody know what they actually need to do in terms of getting the encryption set up properly? That's where tailored guidance comes in. And since we know in this circumstance that this customer is using AWS because they've told us that, we're able then to provide specific guidance for each of those services. And so what you can see here is we have guidance for S3, so the simple storage service, object storage, RDS, database service, EBS, block storage, and then DynamoDB, one of their data stores. And this is all based on the actual services that the customer is using. So this is tailored down to just the set that they actually are using. And if we were to say, actually, no, S3, not in scope for us, then it wouldn't bother to provide that information. So this helps people who may be on their, still kind of climbing the mountain, as it were, on their compliance journey, be successful and really have sort of actionable path forward to be successful. And then in this case, you can see, okay, here's the actual evidence that's attached. And in fact, they've got, so they have DynamoDB. In this case, it's because DynamoDB is encrypted by default, it will tell you that and just say, yep, okay, here's your DynamoDB instance, et cetera, et cetera. And so that allows somebody to make progress if they say don't have dedicated GRC resource to help them understand and operationalize controls like this. Scott, anything else you want to add in here?
No, I would just say that the team has done a really good job here of making answers tailored to each individual customer's unique environment. So again, we're trying to limit the amount of thrash and the amount of questions that your teams may have here in how they need to satisfy controls for your unique environment. This is very different. Tools don't generally give you this kind of specific guidance on a control.
That's right. Or sometimes what we see is maybe very specific guidance, but it only applies to one environment. So, in this case, obviously this example is about AWS. We can do the same thing if somebody was on Google Cloud or Azure. That's really the beauty of this, is it tailors it for the customer. So rather than having kind of a one size fits all task list where if you deviate from that, you're in trouble, this is very, very flexible and works for, whatever the particular client has in their business. Okay. Let's see. And this is just a quick peek at our receptors page. And you can see, in this case, here's this AWS receptor. And again, here's some DynamoDB tables, here's some RDS, etc. And then you can see in here, then the evidence that it gets, like if I were to look at RDS, it's saying, yep, you got this very simple, is encrypted. And indeed, they did the right thing. They were able to follow the guidance there and get to a good spot. All right, I will then transition over to our final feature. This is our report scan feature. So similar to audit scan, we're using a large language model to assist with the evaluation of some content. In this case, SOC 2 reports. So there are kind of a couple of ways that this comes up. So smaller organizations, oftentimes the first time they really dig in and encounter other organizations' SOC 2s are when they're going through their own SOC 2 process and getting their compliance program established. And part of that is managing their third-party risk. So they're going to ask their vendors for all these SOC 2 reports. They get them. And now what? Those reports are usually between 50 and 150 pages long. They are written in a way that is not necessarily most accessible. They use a lot of compliance jargon. And how do you even know if one of those reports is good, bad, ugly, what risks it's introducing into your organization? So that's for people who may not be experts in these reports. And then for larger organizations that have their own compliance staff, reading and evaluating these SOC 2 reports at scale, that can require a pretty significant amount of time. And so even if you have the skill to do it, you may want to free up folks to do other things and really just be flagged around, what's the risk to me and my organization. So that was the thinking behind why we created Report Scan. And Report Scan is very simple. You just upload a PDF of a SOC 2 report. That's all you got to do. And once in here, we give you a summary. So this is one that comes from Atlassian. They actually have a simple click through download process for retrieving their SOC 2 report. So we did that. We got their SOC 2 report, and then we evaluated it here in the report scan. So we do a few things. One, we tell you, is it unqualified or qualified? And we also say what that means in layman's terms. So, hey, they passed. We also tell you, is the report current or not? If it's older, you probably want to go back and get another one. Typically, SOC 2s are published on an annual cadence. You want to make sure you're on the latest one of those. Then we have a little bit of metadata about the auditor. In this case, the data sources that we use about auditors didn't actually include this auditor, which is why it's saying it's not recognized. But for many others, what we'll do is we'll give you some ranking information. And then if they have any public quality control criticisms, we'll also mention that. We tell you which of the trust service criteria they actually went after. And so in this case, security, available, confidentiality. And if they actually addressed all the required criteria. And then the final thing we do is we look at the control testing results, and we tell you if there were non-occurrences, which happen from time to time, usually not a big deal, but if there are many of those, that might be a red flag. And then we tell you if there are exceptions that are found. So situations where the test indicated they didn't quite do what they were supposed to do, and that happens actually quite a lot. This can just sometimes be an invitation to dig in a little bit more. Go check out that report, make sure that those exceptions are things that you understand and are within your risk tolerance. So that is report scan.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick. I think Michael is going to transition us back to the slides where we have some really fun things to share. As Michael teased at the top of this webinar, Eero is here, and we are looking for and excited to invite everybody on this webinar to be a part of the beta launch. We think Eero is really going to change how companies interact with a tool to get to their compliance, whatever framework it is that you're looking to attain. We'd also like to spend more time with any of you that are on this webinar that want to get a more in-depth demo with myself and Nick. So either of those two QR codes there can point you in that direction. Nick, we do have a few questions. I know MJ's been busy and Jenna have been busy answering questions along with Michael on the live stream. But I want to address two questions here that I think are really, really pointed about security. So someone sent a note that says they've got concern with how we're securing their data, how the AI engine and the AI engine of Arrow and the large language model processing is being protected, and hoping that you can shed some light on how we are treating security when it comes to Arrow.
Yeah, great question. So a couple of different things. First of all, so we follow all the kind of security best practices you'd expect. We have our own SOC 2 Type 2. So that's, us proving it. With respect to how we use large language models, we do rely on third parties for some of that. We have our own hosted portion as well. For the third party usage, we use it in the most narrow ways possible. And then we also use it in ways, so in modes where they don't retain any data. So anything we send to them is not incorporated back into their main corpus, anything like that. So that's a really quick answer to that security and privacy question.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to ad lib a bit on this second one because I think it's really interesting. And for those that are on this call that happen to be at SaaStr, they may have caught yours and Jenna's main stage presentation on this topic. But how about the concerns of LLM hallucination? The question basically is, how are you making sure that I'm getting the right answer? But you guys gave quite an interesting presentation at SaaStr, and so how is Trustero protecting in giving answers to make sure that hallucination is not happening with LLMs?
Yeah, it's a really important topic. So we use a technique where we essentially combine human guidance and human expertise with to basically provide guardrails, and then also provide context from what we know about the customer. And then that creates the space in which the LLM will provide the answer. And so that's a general technique that's worked very, very well. The other thing we've done is many thousands of control tests, and we've refined some things over time. So a big QA process is the other thing that's behind this. So those two approaches basically.
That's awesome. Well, I'd like to thank everybody that joined us on this webinar, and thank you for allowing us to go a few minutes over our allotted time. We will make sure that we follow up with any of the questions that we didn't get to on this webinar in writing to everybody that attended. I'd also like to thank you for requesting to join our beta and scheduling extra time with Nick and I if you see fit. And we hope everybody has a wonderful day, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you, everybody.